A fairy had just descended from the sky, and Artemis immediately aimed his gun at her. The centaur discovered that something was wrong, and Artemis's actions quickly enraged the higher-ups of the gods. In an instant, a tsunami surged, and dark, ominous clouds swept across the land like the end of the world. To save his foul eye, Artemis was determined to go to war with the gods. He first went to the place where the fairy was imprisoned, and then took 2 pieces of magical equipment from her. At this point, the time-controlling device of the gods arrived first. It swiftly reached the area above the human world, and under the control of the centaurs, the device suddenly unleashed a tremendous amount of energy. Soon, a massive celestial dome formed over the entire coastline, while an old man was still boating on the sea. Unexpectedly, both the man and his boat were swept up into the air by the giant waves, rising alongside seagulls. Even the surging waves and marine creatures were momentarily frozen. In the next second, a large number of gods appeared from the sea level. They all flew towards the time-freezing celestial dome, and once the gods' army was fully assembled, all magical devices were aimed at the mysterious mansion. However, surprisingly, the mortal Artemis was completely unperturbed because, just before today, Fowl was an antique dealer. He had been telling Artemis stories about fairies, demons, and divine crystals since he was young, but Artemis always considered them bedtime stories. However, in Fowl's mind, these mysterious powers would eventually have to be faced by Artemis alone. On the day of their parting, he told Artemis about the terrifying last kind of mystical creature, the trolls. He also informed Artemis that he must return within 15 days. Unfortunately, the next day, the butler received a phone call from the police station. Fowl's plane had crashed on a deserted island, and Fowl was already missing, presumed dead. Artemis happened to see a report about Fowl on TV. Due to the nature of Fowl's profession and his sudden mysterious disappearance, all antique disappearance cases in the Western world quickly found a scapegoat. Overnight, his Fowl became a wanted criminal mastermind, which left Artemis deeply unsettled. Just then, the phone rang suddenly, and Artemis hurriedly answered it. At that moment, in a distant ancient cave, an unknown mysterious creature was calling Artemis. His Fowl had been captured and was now imprisoned in this cave. The creature gave Artemis 3 days to hand over a divine artifact called the Acheron, which left Artemis baffled. Just then, the butler pulled Artemis aside. He opened a secret room entrusted to his family, where the family's generational secrets were kept. One day, this responsibility would fall on Artemis, but the butler had to inform Artemis today. It turned out that Fowl had always told Artemis that the secrets of the other world were true. They were responsible for eliminating traces of the other world left in the human realm, to prevent human panic. However, due to his interactions on the edge of the other world, Fowl had coincidentally met a fairy from the gods. As the fairy was dying, it handed over a divine artifact to Fowl, who then became the target of dark elves. But the dark elves did not know that this time, they had provoked something they shouldn't have. Because Artemis's fearsome nature is beyond imagination, inspired by Fowl since childhood, Artemis had defeated the European chess champion within 5 steps when he was 7. At 9, he won the Berlin Opera House Architectural Design Award. By the age of 10, he had cloned a goat on his own. Even in front of a seasoned psychologist nearing 50, he could effortlessly compete. Soon, he discovered in Fowl's journal that a fairy regularly came to the human world to worship a rubber tree. He and the butler lay in ambush not far from the rubber tree and quietly waited for the fairy's arrival. The gods lived not far from humans, and they had created a marvelous realm at the center of the earth. This place is shielded from ultraviolet rays and not bound by Earth's gravity. Known as the Fairyland, it is not only well-connected but also technologically advanced. However, because this place was home to various beings besides the gods, crimes frequently occurred. Thus, the gods' police force was established to maintain order, but you'd be surprised to know that this fairy, Short, is actually over 80 years old. At that moment, a goblin suddenly arrived to report that they had detected unusual activity from a volcano. Under the centaur's detection, they quickly discovered that a captive troll had escaped its confinement. It then leaped through the volcano into the human world. Following the commander's instructions, Short was launched into the human world through a special device in the volcano. In mid-air, he flapped his wings. Soaring between mountains and plains, he flew over human cities, stealthily navigating the skies. If you ever see an unidentified object gliding through the sky, don't be surprised. At last, he discovered the traces of the trolls ravaging on the ground, but as soon as he lightly flew over those traces, they vanished. Meanwhile, at a human wedding, a little girl was about to eat an ice cream cone, but just then, the troll grabbed the girl in its hand. As the troll was about to eat the girl, a fairy from the gods suddenly descended. The troll threw the girl at the fairy. Amidst the terrified screams of the crowd, the fairy soared into the air and caught the girl. Meanwhile, on the side of the gods, the fairy commander immediately issued an order. He commanded the centaurs to release a time control device, which shot up into the sky towards the human town. At this point, the troll, having lost its food, began to become agitated, attacking the people around it. Seeing the little girl in imminent danger, Short directly defied the gods' orders and used divine magic to heal the girl. As the troll charged towards them, Short tore off a power cable and wrapped it around the troll. However, in a moment of carelessness, he was grabbed by the troll. With the crisis approaching, the centaurs quickly activated the time dome. In an instant, everything in the area was enveloped by it. Everything here slowed down by more than 10,000 times. Since the gods were not affected by the time control device, Short managed to escape. At this point, a large number of reinforcements from the gods finally arrived. They began to clean up the battlefield at an extremely high speed. Everything destroyed by the otherworldly beings was quickly restored. Next, they scanned everyone to erase their memories of this terrifying event. Then, with the combined effort of the fairies, they returned the troll to its prison in the otherworld. As the time control device was gradually retracted, humans regained their movement. Although they were puzzled by the chaos they had witnessed, they would not retain any memory of the troll. Meanwhile, Short defied orders and flew towards a rubber tree in the human world. Because her father had once met his demise here, when she arrived, she finally found her father's card. However, just as she was about to leave, she was suddenly attacked by humans. Thus, the scene at the beginning of the story occurred. The army of the gods arrived in the human world, attempting to rescue Short from the hands of humans, but Artemis was completely unfazed because everything was part of his plan. From the moment he captured Short, he was certain he had leverage to negotiate with the gods. He drew the gods in to rescue Short, and after briefly fending off the first wave of attacks, he signaled to the butler to change the weapon's form. Then, using a crossbow, he shot through the gods' time control device. He forced the gods to negotiate with him because once the time dome vanished, the gods would be fully exposed to the world, which would be a devastating blow to them. Indeed, the gods' commander fell for the trap. When he walked into the room, Artemis had already planned everything. He knew the fairy's sacred artifact was hidden somewhere in the room by Fowl. Therefore, he proposed that the fairies use their sacred artifact to exchange for the girl. Seeing that the fairies could not produce the artifact, the negotiation fell apart. Next, the fairy commander thought of Mulch. Mulch was currently imprisoned in the fairies' jail. In the jail, besides Mulch, there were also goblins. The goblins, seeing Mulch's arrogance, were furious and approached to teach him a lesson. One of them spat out a burst of fire and held it in his palm. Threatened, Mulch immediately cowered and then sucked the fire back into his mouth. This back and forth frightened Mulch greatly, but the next second, this mutated Mulch suddenly moved forward and blocked the goblin's mouth and nose. This prevented the goblin from expelling the fire, causing it to explode on the spot. A group of goblins was blown away as a result. At that moment, the prison guards finally arrived. Mulch was fired into the human world from the volcano. Then, he was pulled into the time dome by two warships. Under the temptation of a 75-year reduction in his sentence, he eagerly agreed to go to the human room to rescue Short. This was because Mulch possessed an extraordinary ability. In an instant, he opened his massive mouth and began to bite frantically at the ground. The ground was rapidly chewed into a large hole before his eyes. Soon, he arrived at the house and began to search for the room where the fairy was imprisoned. However, while searching, his scanning eyes seemed to find something even more valuable in the room. When he uncovered a painting on the wall, behind it, he first discovered a very intricate device. Combined with Mulch's natural desire for treasure, he had already forgotten his mission, but all this was actually part of Artemis's plan. Artemis had learned from Fowl's journal that the dwarf clan had an innate obsession with treasure, so he captured the fairy to lure out Mulch, then had him come to his room to find the fairy's sacred artifact hidden by Fowl. He hoped to use the fairy's sacred artifact to exchange for Fowl's life. Mulch quickly bypassed the first layer of the safe's protection, but suddenly, the second layer of protection activated. If there are only two beings in the world who can open this vault, one of them must be this dwarf, because his entire set of talents was born for thievery. In the next second, the vault was directly opened, and what was inside astonished everyone. It was indeed the fairy clan's sacred artifact, the Acleus, the most powerful magic treasure in the fairy world. Artemis, seeing the treasure collected by Fowl, did not want the gods outside to discover it, but Mulch tugged at his lower eyelid, indicating that the fairies had already discovered their sacred artifact due to the surveillance on his eyes. At this point, the space-time controller was damaged, and the distorted space began to consume everything inside. The traitor, in order to obtain the fairy sacred artifact, used his authority to remove the god's commander from his post. Then, under his orders, he made a bold decision. He arranged for the troll, who had just been imprisoned last night, to be transported. The troll was dropped at a mansion in the South Sea, and using the transport aircraft, the troll's head was used as a hammer to smash against the room's door. In the next second, the troll was launched into the room. When the troll regained consciousness from its stupor, it went on a rampage, destroying everything in the room. It killed anyone it saw, showing extreme terror. At this time, Mulch, seeing the fairy sacred artifact lying on the ground, swallowed it to prevent it from being taken by the troll. This angered the troll greatly, and it immediately attacked him. Everyone fled in front, with the troll chasing behind. Thus, they struggled in the room for several rounds. In the next second, Artemis was accidentally grabbed by the troll. As the troll was about to eat him, the fairy that Artemis had just released suddenly rushed in. With her help, Artemis narrowly escaped, but the troll, in a wild charge, came crashing towards them again. However, it unexpectedly got itself hung on a large chandelier. Artemis picked up a magical weapon and attacked the troll, but despite several attempts, he failed to hit it. He wanted to get closer to attack, but, due to the troll's weight, the next second it fell from above. At a critical moment, the butler rushed up, pushing Artemis aside but exposing himself under the troll. The heavy impact instantly shattered the butler's bones, and the troll, having hit its head on the ground, temporarily lost consciousness. Seeing the butler about to die and saying his final goodbyes to Artemis, Short suddenly discovered that her magic had miraculously recovered. Without waiting for the two to react, she rushed up and slapped the butler's chest in the last second before he died. Suddenly, magic surged outside the window, and the butler miraculously revived on the spot. Meanwhile, the outer space-time barrier had begun to collapse. Before the distorted space could devour everything here, all the members of the gods had to abandon their sacred artifacts and began to retreat in large numbers. At this moment, the distorted space was like an invisible flood, consuming everything it touched. Many gods, unable to escape in time, were submerged by the space-time tunnel. Having escaped, Short seized the opportunity and flew straight towards the old man trapped by the space-time barrier. Then, through a crack in the space-time dome, she finally brought the old man back to the outside world. At a critical moment, Mulch escaped from here, but just then, the centaurs finally closed the space-time controller. The imprisoned time passed several days and nights in an instant. Artemis intended to use the sacred artifact to get his Fowl back, but Short did not leave. She chose to forgive Artemis for kidnapping her and agreed to use the fairy clan's sacred artifact to save Fowl. After the two reached an agreement and shook hands, Short took the artifact and began to chant over it. As dazzling light gathered, the dark fairy sensed a surge of magic. Before Artemis could save Fowl, he preemptively launched a magical attack on Frank. The artifact released a powerful current that shot into the sky, and Fowl's body was mostly submerged in dark magic. Suddenly, the fairy artifact released a powerful magical force that radiated outwards. Even the entire cave imprisoning Frank trembled. When the light faded, the fairy artifact in Short's hand was restored to its original form. Artemis frantically searched the room for Fowl's whereabouts, but after a thorough search, they returned empty-handed. At this moment, everyone suddenly heard movement from the underground chamber. Fowl finally returned to the human world at the last moment.